There is a man I used to work with. Every 18 months, a new SUV appeared in his driveway. Not bought, leased, always the same brand, always one trim level up from the last one, always in the same charcoal gray, as if the car were a subscription he had signed up for in his 20s and never canceled. I did the math on it once, quietly, on the back of a meeting agenda. Between the payment, the insurance premium that came with the badge, and the fact that he never once owned anything at the end of it, that driveway was costing him around $700 a month, every month, forever. $700 a month, invested at a perfectly ordinary 7%, becomes about $365,000 in 20 years. He was not buying a car. He was renting a costume. And here is the thing about a rented costume. You never stop paying for it, and you never get to keep it. Now, most people watching this already know that flashy spending is not the same as wealth. That is not new information. You have heard some version of it your whole life. But knowing it and seeing it are two completely different skills. Because the performance of wealth is very well designed. It is designed by people whose entire business depends on you being unable to tell the difference. And it works. If you put a genuinely wealthy person and a genuinely broke person in the same room, wearing what they normally wear, driving what they normally drive, the average observer picks wrong more often than they pick right. That is not an accident. That is the whole point of the costume. So today, I'm going to give you the 10 signs that someone is performing wealth rather than holding it. 10 specific observable behaviors. Not vibes, not vague advice about humility. Things you can actually watch for. Some of them you will recognize immediately, a couple will surprise you, and one of them only shows up under a very specific condition, which is why almost nobody has it on their list. But I want to be honest with you about where this is going before we start, because otherwise the ending will feel like a trick. This is not really a video about other people. By the time we get to number 10, you are going to notice that you have been quietly checking yourself against the list. That is intentional. The costume is not something only rich-looking strangers wear. It is something almost everyone wears, at their own income level, in their own size. One promise before we start. Nothing on this list requires you to earn more money. Not one of the 10. Every single sign is a behavior, which means every single one has an opposite that is available to you starting today, at whatever you currently make. And I am not going to tell you to stop enjoying your money. That is a stupid thing to say to an adult. I am going to show you the difference between money you enjoy and money that is enjoying you. Let's start. Sign 1. The newest thing they own is parked outside. This is the loudest signal there is, and it is loud in exactly the wrong direction. Here is what to actually look for. Not an expensive car. An expensive car that is newer than everything else in their life. A 3-month-old vehicle in front of a house with a roof that needs work. A premium badge in the parking lot of an apartment building. A lease that turns over faster than their furniture. The mismatch is the tell, not the price. And the reason is mechanical. A car is the single easiest large purchase to finance, the fastest to lose value, and the most visible thing most people own. That combination makes it the perfect costume piece. High signal, low barrier, and the cost is spread thin enough that it never feels like a decision. Decades of research on how American millionaires actually live keeps producing the same unglamorous finding. The majority of them drive vehicles that are several years old, frequently bought used, and kept well past the point where an upgrade would have been socially acceptable. Meanwhile, the person with the newest car on the street is, statistically, far more likely to be servicing it than to own it. Let me put a name on this. Call him Dale. Dale earns a very respectable income, and for the last 15 years, he has kept a car payment in his budget continuously. Not the same payment, a series of them, each one replacing the last before it ended. He has never once experienced the sensation of a car being fully his. If you add up what Dale has moved through that line of his budget over 15 years, and you imagine that money doing literally anything else, sitting in an index fund, sitting in a savings account, paying down a mortgage. The difference is not a nicer holiday. It is a different retirement. Dale is not reckless. He has never missed a payment. He is, by every conventional measure, financially responsible. He is just wearing the costume, continuously, and paying the rental fee every single month without ever noticing it as a choice. What to do this week? Open your banking app and find every recurring payment attached to something people can see from the outside. The vehicle, the lease, the upgrade plan on the phone. Add them up. Do not judge the number. Just look at it, because most people genuinely do not know what it is. Sign 2. You know what everything cost, and they told you. Pay attention to this one in conversation, because once you hear it, you cannot stop hearing it. The person performing wealth volunteers prices. Unprompted. The holiday comes with a figure attached. The renovation comes with a figure. The watch, the school fees, the bottle at dinner, all of it arrives pre-priced, casually, as though the number were an incidental detail rather than the entire reason the story is being told. The genuinely wealthy person, in the same conversation, tells you they went somewhere nice and moves on. Here is why this happens, and it is not really about money at all. Stating a number is a status move. Status moves are made by people who are still climbing, still measuring, still uncertain whether the room has registered their position. Someone who has genuinely stopped worrying about their financial standing simply has no reason to broadcast it, in the same way that a person who is not hungry does not think about lunch. There is a second reason, and it is less flattering. Prices are the cheapest possible evidence. You can quote a number for something you financed, something you are behind on, something you cannot actually afford. The number proves the purchase. It proves nothing whatsoever about the balance sheet underneath it, which is exactly why it gets used. Call her Marisol. Marisol is very generous with prices. Everyone in her circle knows what her kitchen cost and what her car costs a month. What nobody knows, because she does not know it either, and we will get to that in sign 7, is what she is worth. The numbers she shares are all outflows. The number she does not share is the only one that matters. The uncomfortable version of this sign is that it works on you in both directions. When someone tells you what something cost, you are being invited to place them. And most of us accept the invitation without noticing, and then quietly adjust our own spending to keep pace with a position that may not exist. What to do this week? For 7 days, notice every time you are about to volunteer a price that nobody asked for. You do not have to stop. Just count. The number will tell you something about how much of your spending has an audience built into it. Sign 3. Their income has gone up several times and their balance has not. This is the one people find hardest to spot because it is invisible from the outside. You cannot see it in a driveway. You can only see it over time and only if you are paying attention. Here is the pattern. A promotion arrives. Within a few months, the promotion is gone, absorbed into a slightly better apartment, a slightly better car, a slightly better everything. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could point at and call a mistake. Just a life that quietly expanded to exactly the size of the new number. And then it happens again with the next raise. And the next. The technical name for this is lifestyle inflation, which makes it sound like an economic phenomenon that happens to you. It is not. It is a series of individually reasonable decisions that, taken together, guarantee that no amount of income will ever produce wealth. Because here is the mathematics of it, and it is brutal in its simplicity. Wealth is not what you earn. Wealth is the gap between what you earn and what you spend, held over time. If the gap does not widen when the income rises, the income is irrelevant. A person earning triple can absolutely retire with less than a person earning a third as much, and this happens constantly. Watch for it in the way people talk about raises. Someone building wealth says, The raise went into the account. Someone performing it says the raise came just in time, which means the spending arrived first and the income caught up. Call him Terrence. Terrence has doubled his income over 12 years, which is a genuine achievement. He also has almost exactly the same amount of money left at the end of each month as he did at the beginning of those 12 years. Every increase found a home before it found an account. Terrence does not feel rich, and he is confused about why, because he is doing objectively well. The answer is that he has been running a treadmill at increasing speed while standing in the same place. What to do this week? Think back to your last raise, whatever size it was. Can you say where it went? Not roughly, specifically. If you cannot, that is not a failure of memory. That is the sign. Sign 4. You can identify the brand from across the room. This one needs care because it is easy to turn into snobbery, and snobbery is not what we are doing here. The sign is not that someone owns nice things. Wealthy people own extremely nice things. The sign is that the things are legible, that the value is printed on the outside where strangers can read it. There is a whole category of spending where you are not buying quality, you are buying the fact that other people can identify the quality. The stitching does not get better when the logo gets bigger. What gets better is the transmission of the signal, and the transmission is the expensive part. Here is the tell that separates the two. Ask what the item is like to use. Someone who bought the object will tell you about the object, how it wears, how it holds up, what it replaced. Someone who bought the signal will tell you what it cost, or where it came from, or who else has one. They will describe the item's position rather than the item. There is a reason the genuinely wealthy drift away from visible branding over time, and it is not modesty. It is that once your financial position is not in question, paying a premium for other people to be informed of it becomes a strange thing to do with money. The signal has no remaining job. Call her Priya. Priya spends real money on very few things. A coat she has had for 9 years, a pair of boots she has resoled twice, a mattress that cost more than her first car. None of them have a visible logo. All of them get used every single day, which means the cost per use has quietly collapsed to almost nothing. Her colleague spends the same amount annually, distributed across things that are seen rather than used, replaced on a cycle set by fashion rather than wear. Same outflow. Completely different outcome. One of them is buying durability. The other is renting relevance. What to do this week? Look at the last 3 non-essential purchases, over $100 that you made. For each one, ask honestly, would I have bought this exact item if literally nobody would ever see it? Not, would I still like it? Would I have bought it? Some yeses, some nos. The ratio is the information. Quick honest note, right here in the middle. I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Everything here comes from my own research and from published work on how wealthy households actually behave, and all of it is a generalization. Plenty of wealthy people break every rule on this list, and plenty of people who look nothing like this description are in serious trouble. Before you make any real decision about your money, talk to someone qualified who knows your full situation. Now, number 5, which is where this starts getting uncomfortable. Sign 5. There is always a deal about to close. Listen for the tense. Not, I did, not, I own, about to. The funding round that is nearly signed. The property that is almost through. The opportunity that will change everything in the next quarter and did not change anything in the last 4. The perpetual about to is one of the most reliable signals in this entire list, and it is reliable for a structural reason. Someone whose finances are actually working does not need the next thing to work. They have a boring base, index funds, a paid-down mortgage, a business that already functions. And the boring base means the next deal is optional. Optional things do not get talked about with urgency. Someone performing wealth has a lifestyle running ahead of their balance sheet, which means the next deal is not optional. It is load-bearing. And load-bearing things get talked about constantly because the person is, at some level, trying to make them real by saying them out loud. This is why the performance intensifies rather than relaxes over time. The costume gets more expensive to maintain, so the story about the incoming money has to get bigger to justify it. There is a cruel version of this that plays out in families. The relative who is always 6 months from the breakthrough, always needing a bridge, always certain that this one is different. Not a liar, a person genuinely trapped between the version of themselves they have been performing and the arithmetic underneath it. Call him Marcus. Marcus has had 4 next years in a row. Each one was plausible. Each one was described in detail at dinner. None of them arrived, and the lifestyle that was built in anticipation of them did not get dismantled between attempts. It just kept running, funded by the belief that the next one would cover it. The wealthy version of Marcus exists too, by the way. Same intelligence, same ambition, same appetite for risk. The difference is that his lifestyle is funded by what already happened, and his risks are funded by what he can afford to lose. What to do this week? Think about your own financial plan and ask whether any part of it depends on something that has not happened yet. A bonus, a sale, a raise. If your current spending is calibrated to money that is still hypothetical, you are running Marcus's system at a smaller scale. Sign 6. The generosity happens where people can see it. This one is delicate because generosity is genuinely good, and I do not want to make you cynical about it. But there is a difference between generosity and the performance of it, and the difference is observable. Watch who picks up the check, and watch when. The reach for the bill at a table of 8 announced is a different act from the quiet settling of it before anyone notices. Both cost the same money. Only one of them buys something in return. The signal is the audience. Public generosity has a return: status, gratitude, position in the group. It is a transaction with a social payoff, which is fine, but it is not the same thing as giving money away. Private generosity has no return by construction. Nobody knows. There is nothing to receive back, which is precisely why it requires actually having the money and why it is one of the strongest wealth signals that exists. Here's the part that surprises people. The genuinely wealthy tend to give more, not less, but you will almost never hear about it. The scholarship without their name on it. The relative's medical bill, settled, never mentioned again. The size of the gesture nobody saw cannot be faked for an audience that is not there. Call her Yolanda. Yolanda has never once picked up a restaurant bill with an announcement. She has also, in the last 4 years, quietly covered 2 family emergencies that the rest of the family still does not know the source of. If you were ranking that table by apparent wealth, she would not finish first. She would not finish in the top half. There is a version of this sign that catches almost everyone, and it is smaller and more forgivable. The round of drinks you cannot really afford, bought because the moment demanded it. The gift price to match what you think the other person spent. That is not villainy. That is the costume, in its everyday size. What to do this week? The next time you are about to be generous, notice whether there is an audience, and notice whether the presence of the audience is changing the amount. Not to stop, just to see it. Sign 7. Ask what they spend in a month, and the answer gets vague. This is the quietest sign on the list, and, in my opinion, the single most predictive one. Ask a genuinely wealthy person their monthly spending, and you get a number, within a few $100s, without hesitation. Ask their net worth, and they know it closely enough to be useful. not because they are obsessive. Most of them ran the numbers properly once and update occasionally. Ask the person in the newest car on the street, and you get a range, a big one, or a redirect. Depends on the month. It varies. I should really look at that. Vagueness about your own numbers is almost never neutral. People know the numbers that make them feel good and avoid the numbers that do not. When someone has genuinely no idea what they spend, it is usually because the answer would require a decision they are not ready to make. And there is a compounding problem underneath it. You cannot manage what you have not measured, so the vagueness is not just a symptom. It actively protects the behavior. Every month that the number stays unknown is a month it does not have to change. Call him Reuben. Reuben could tell you the price of every visible thing he owns, to the dollar. He could not tell you, within $1,000, what leaves his accounts each month. Both of those facts are about the same person and the same money, and together, they describe the entire condition. Here is the uncomfortable part, and I am including myself in it. Most people who watch a video like this and feel comfortable about signs 1 through 6 will fail sign 7. Not knowing your monthly outflow is close to universal, and it is universal precisely because knowing it is unpleasant. What to do this week? This is the one I would actually do, if you only do one. Open your accounts, take the last 3 months, and find the average of what went out. Not a budget, not a plan, just the number. Most people are wrong about their own by a margin that genuinely shocks them. Sign 8. Ask what they invest in, and you get a story. Real investing is astonishingly boring to listen to. Index funds, a rental property, their own business, held for a very long time. There is no narrative arc, no moment of vindication, nothing you would repeat at a dinner table. Performed investing is a story every time. The position that is about to move, the coin that is early. The options play, described with terminology that has been recently acquired. There is always tension, always a timeline, and always a version of the future where the teller is proven right. The tell is the presence of a plot. Because excitement in investing is not a bonus feature. Excitement is what risk feels like from the inside. A portfolio that generates stories is generating them because it is volatile, concentrated, or leveraged. And those are the 3 properties that most reliably destroy capital over long periods. There is also a selection effect that makes this worse than it looks. You hear about the position that went up. You do not hear about the one that went to 0, because that one does not get retold. So the storyteller's track record, as presented, is systematically better than their actual returns, sometimes dramatically. Call her Nadia. Nadia has been in 4 exciting things in 6 years. 2 of them she still talks about. 2 of them have simply stopped being mentioned. And nobody in her circle has noticed the omission because absence is invisible in conversation. Her brother has been in the same 3 boring funds for 11 years and has never once had anything interesting to say about it. He also has substantially more money, which nobody at the table would guess because he has no material. What to do this week? Look at your own holdings and ask which of them you have described out loud to someone in the last year. Not as a confession, as data. The ones you talk about are usually the ones you are least sure of, and that is worth knowing about yourself. Sign 9. The address is impressive and the house is not finished. This is the largest scale version of the costume, and it does the most damage, because a house is the one purchase big enough to constrain every other decision for decades. Look for the mismatch between the outside and the inside, the right postcode and the empty rooms, the impressive frontage and the furniture that has not been replaced since the move, the kitchen that was the reason for the purchase and the holidays that stopped afterwards. A house bought for its address is a status purchase wearing the costume of an investment, and it is uniquely effective at hiding, because housing is the one category where overspending is socially applauded rather than questioned. Nobody has ever been told they were reckless for stretching on a home. But the arithmetic does not care about the framing. A mortgage calibrated to the top of what a lender will approve does not leave room for the thing that actually builds wealth, which is the monthly surplus. And unlike a car, you cannot quietly downgrade a house in 18 months. The decision locks. There is a second cost that people miss entirely. Expensive neighborhoods come with expensive norms. The cars on the street, the schools, the renovations, the standard of what is normal, all of it recalibrates upward, and all of it applies pressure to a budget that was already at its limit before the neighbors were factored in. Call them the Okonkwo's. They bought at the very top of what they were approved for, in the neighborhood they wanted their children to grow up in, which is a genuinely loving motivation. 11 years later, the house is beautiful from the road and half furnished behind the door, and the retirement accounts have not grown meaningfully since the purchase. They are not in trouble. They will be fine. They simply spent their entire surplus on a location, and the location does not compound. What to do this week? If you own, look up what percentage of your take-home pay goes to housing in total. Payment, tax, insurance, maintenance. If you rent, same exercise. Then ask what the number would have to be for you to have real breathing room and how far away that is. Sign 10. Ask what enough looks like, and there is no answer. This is the sign that holds up all the other 9, and it is the reason the costume never comes off. Ask a genuinely wealthy person what number would mean they were done, and you get an answer. Sometimes a figure, sometimes a life described in a sentence, the house paid off, the work optional, this much a year. They have thought about it, and thinking about it is exactly what allowed everything else to become quiet. Ask the person performing wealth, and the answer is a shape rather than a number. More. Better. The next level. A target that recedes at precisely the speed you approach it, which means it can never be hit, which means the spending that signals progress toward it can never stop. This is not a character flaw. It is a structural condition. Without a defined finish line, every dollar has to keep working as evidence, forever. There is no version of the future in which the performance ends, because there is nothing for it to end at. And this is why the other 9 signs are so persistent in the people who have them. They are not 9 bad habits. They are 9 expressions of one missing decision. The man with the new SUV every 18 months does not have a number. If he had one, the driveway would have been a conversation years ago, and the conversation would have been short. Here's what makes this sign different from the rest. Every other one on this list costs money. This one costs nothing at all. Deciding what enough looks like requires no income, no discipline, no sacrifice. It requires an afternoon and a piece of honesty, and it is the only one that changes the other 9 on its own. Once there is a number, everything that does not move you toward it starts to feel expensive. Not morally, arithmetically. The costume becomes visible as a cost rather than a default. What to do this week? Write down one sentence describing what enough looks like for you. Not a fantasy. A number in a life. Most people have never written it, and most people find that writing it takes about 20 minutes and changes several decisions immediately. Now look back at the 10 together, and notice what they have in common. Newest thing in the driveway. Prices volunteered. Raises that vanish. Logos that talk. The deal that is always about to close. Generosity with witnesses. No idea what the month costs. A portfolio with a plot. An address instead of a home. And no number that means enough. Not one of them is about income. Every single one is a behavior, which means every single one is available to be changed at any income, including yours, starting this week. And that is why this was never really a field guide for spotting other people. You have been running the list against yourself since about number 3. I know, because I wrote it, and I did the same thing. I did not score 10 out of 10. I did not score 0 either. The costume is not something only wealthy-looking strangers wear. It is something almost everyone wears, sized to their own income, rented by the month, and never quite paid off. I never said anything to the man with the SUV. It was not my business, and he did not ask. But I think about that back of the agenda calculation more than I expected to. $700 a month. About $365,000 over 20 years. Not a fortune. Not life-changing money for someone on his income. Just the difference between finishing and not finishing. He is still working, as far as I know. Still leasing. And the strange thing is that I do not think he ever enjoyed the cars. He never talked about driving them. He talked about getting them. That is the part that stays with me. The costume was not even fun. It was just on. So here is the exercise. Go back through the 10 and score yourself honestly. 1 point each. Then, take the one that stung the most, not the easiest one, and do the small thing at the end of it this week. Tell me your score in the comments. I read every single one.